All right, welcome back to Wednesday's edition of Morning Ride. At this point, we want to quickly review our papers' headlines. Okay, this morning, these are the papers we have: the Nigerian Tribune, the Daily Trust, the Daily Times,
the Vanguard newspaper, the Punch, the Guardian, the Daily Sun, and the Nation newspapers.
Okay, there is Daily Trust here too. Okay, let's see the Nation. Okay, so we'll quickly start with, let's see now, the Nigerian Tribune. Can we have a copy of the Nigerian Tribune? Nigerian Tribune this morning has major headlines. The screaming one here says, Adeleke demands Osun Senator's arrest. Adeleke demands Osun Senator's arrest. That story is on page 3, and the writers accuses him of calling for the killing of Accord members, says it is a matter of national security. I said kill Accord with votes, not violence. Father Busi explains, okay? So that's the senator explaining. He said, I said kill Accord with votes, not violence. Father Busi explains. The last rider, police to deploy over 10,000 personnel, okay? From the top strip of the Nigerian Tribune, Tinubu approves a deep offshore investment framework to unlock $50 billion in new investment. Tinubu approves deep offshore investment framework to unlock $50 billion in new investment. The story you will find on page 23. On page 13, 10 police officers, 17 bandits killed in Zamfara Kebbi clash. Okay. From the left strip of the Nigerian Tribune on page 23, TUC demands 1,000 naira to dollar exchange rate. The rider says stronger naira will cut food prices. Page 6 has the story, Nigeria to benefit from $100 billion investments in oil and gas and others. Page 6. Page 29 has the story, millions of Nigerian children risk losing basic rights without birth certificates. That statement is credited to UNICEF. On health, page 16, sickle cell trait may hide diabetes. Ghana study warns. Sickle cell trait may hide diabetes. Ghana study warns. That story you'll find on page 10. Also on page 10, ASU threatens strike over haphazard implementation of 2025 FGN ASU agreement. Gives 21 varsities 14-day ultimatum. On page 7, we have this headline, how devalued currency debt pressures weigh on improvements in Nigeria's economy. Page 22, the last headline from the Nigerian Tribune, no democracy in Africa, but forced liberal democracy, says Obasanjo. Well, these are the stories we're following from the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Now let's look at the Vanguard newspaper. The front page of the Vanguard newspaper has the Vanguard. Alright, the front page of the Vanguard newspaper has this major headline, Osun decides, candidates talk tough, unveil plans for state. The riders, I'm a bulldozer, not afraid of federal might. APC governors, says Adeleke. Oyebamiji downplays federal might, vows to banish poverty. We will build on past governors' achievements, said Salam. Controversy over Senator Fadahusi's comment. Alright, you can get details on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper and page 13. At the top strip we have federal government backs regional petrol pricing benchmark for West Africa. That's on page 22. Infrastructure terrorism. How scavengers wreak havoc on public facilities. That's on page 2. 5% TSC, passengers stranded as unions protest grounds flight. Passengers stranded as unions protest grounds flights in Lagos, Abuja. That's on page 9. 2027, Atiku raises concern over outdated beavers. That's on page 32. Incitement, CAN, PFN, NHRC, Kwankwaso knock check Jingi. And Riders says NHRC asks federal government to arrest, prosecute Sheikh Jingi for hate speech. Political choice, not threat. Religious division is, says Khan. Government should be hard on religious extremists, says PFM. Divisive statements must be dealt with. This is coming from Kwankwaso. You can get details from page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. ASU orders 20 universities to prepare for strike, gives federal government states 14-day ultimatum. That's on page 9. Jonathan's 2015 sacrifices saved Nigeria's democracy, says Nenandi Usman. That's on page 12. Federal government targets 6 flashpoints in new push to end farmers-herders clashes. That's on page 7. PDP, ADC, kick as Cross River pegs presidential campaign ads at 150 million naira. Governorship, 100 million naira. That's on page 12. And that's just for campaign ads. Reform. Tinubu projects $50 billion revenue to unlock offshore investment. That's the last headline on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, and it's on page 30.
Okay, we'll quickly take a look at headlines rocking the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian. The Guardian newspaper this morning has these headlines. The Guardian. The screaming headline from here: Air Peace versus unions. Chaos as passengers, airlines suffer losses from over 80 cancelled flights. That story is on page 6, and the photos speak on the Guardian newspaper. That's what you see. Passengers at the airport, okay? We have other photos speak, but let's look at this headline from the top strip of the Guardian newspaper on page 3. 2027, ADC unveils Code of Ethics documents for candidates and members. Please get the details on page 3. Also on page 3, Osun 2026, Adeleke, Oyebamiji, Salam, talk tough, a victory. Page 7 has this headline: Federal government recovers 3 billion naira media debt, declares end to unpaid adverts. Okay, from the bottom strip of the Guardian, this headline on page 6: Obasanjo, Jonathan, others seek overhaul of Nigeria's democracy and governance structure. Obasanjo, Jonathan, others seek overhaul of Nigeria's democracy, governance structure. Please get the details. On page 4, ASU prepares 20 varsities for industrial action, issues 14-day ultimatum. Please get the details. Alright, on page 7, UBEC urges states to deploy unutilized 332 billion naira education development fund. Okay, lastly, we have this headline: Nigeria's highest debt service, draining social infrastructure spending, AFDB warns. Alright, these are the headlines we're tracking from the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Next is the Daily Times. The Daily Times newspaper. Major headline says 12 years of APC brought Osun nothing but pain, says Governor Adeleke. Defense record on salaries rose. Dismisses Oyinlola's endorsement as paperweight politics. Orire abduction, or your government hunts for evidence as DSS frees suspect. CBN opens regulatory door to virtual assets, data-driven finance. Senate gives Seplat, three other oil firms, 48 hours to answer queries on NEITI report. And the last headline from the Daily Times says, Obi decries erosion of judicial independence, electoral credibility. Those are the headlines from the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. Now let's look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper has as major headline, Osun election, 10 battleground local governments that may decide Adeleke Oyebamiji race. The riders says town hall meeting, Adeleke defense record, Oyebamiji Salam unveil plans. ADC Salam banks on Aregbesola to spring surprise. 3 suspected party members killed as violence deepens. That's on pages 2 and 8 of the Punch newspaper. At the top strip we have Fubara lawmakers battle stalls Rivers 1.85 trillion naira budget. That's on page 9. One would think that peace has returned to Rivers State, but this headline says Fubara lawmakers battle stalls Rivers 1.85 trillion naira budget. No difference worth breaking Nigeria apart. This is coming from our president, President Tinubu, and that is on page 9. No difference worth breaking Nigeria apart. Passengers stranded as unions ground air peace flights. Get that on page 33 of the Punch newspaper. Obasanjo, Obi, demand major shake-up of democratic institutions. That's on page 9. 224 dead, 700 injured as powerful earthquake rocks Colombia. You can see pictures on the front page of the Punch newspaper of the earthquake that rocked Colombia. Then at the bottom we have police plan fresh security roadmap ahead of 2027 polls. That's on page 12. 10 cops, 2 civilians killed, 17 bandits neutralized in Kebbi. Get that on pages 4 and 5. And the last headline from the Punch newspaper says, Bodola refineries shun domestic crude over high costs. Get that on page 20 of the Punch newspaper.
All right, Blessing, I think we'll wrap up paper review this morning right here, just to allow for us to attend to our next feature this morning on the ride. Right, so these are the headlines we want to follow from the papers we have this morning. Note that information you get will help you. So get information, get the daily papers, either the hard copies or the online copies, so you are fully abreast with what is happening in Nigeria and beyond. All right, listen. Yeah.
That's what you can take.
Yes, that's much, right? Yes.
And on today's edition of Morning Ride, Wednesday's edition. Thank you so much for being part of the show. I will wish you a beautiful day.
Have a great day from all of us. Good morning to you.